The Gospel of Zilch by the non-prophet Tim Snavely. Chapter 15. Prophecy and Hypothesis. Sir Prophet of the Obvious yelled obnoxiously, "I have a prophecy for you! A testable hypothesis I bestow to your ears!" A young male voice emerges from the nearby speaker. "Nah, I'm good. I'm not in need of a prophecy at the moment. But I'm ready to take your order for a burger, however." The non-prophet spoke his completely useless prophecy anyway. "You will die someday if you continue on this path you are going." The speaker beyond the speaker spoke. "Sir, this is the Dairy Queen, and you're the one who came to me." We see the author of this book dressed up like Tim the Enchanter from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Ram horns on the head, and a long dark robe that covers the whole body save for a clean-shaven face and the exposed hands, which were white as a cracker. Standing, without a vehicle, in a Dairy Queen drive-thru, visibly dazed but coherent. He takes a quick look at their menu before returning to speak with the cashier. "Oh, I knew that. But I have." "Oh, God," the cashier interjected annoyingly. Tim continued. "Another prophecy! I can see it! Oh, in the near future! Yes, you will make me not a burger, no, a buffalo chicken melt and a medium s'mores blizzard. Why do I hypothesize that you will hand this blizzard to me upside down? This is such an unlikely vision I see. It's like magic. I see why Zilch have sent me here now to see this wizardry of matter." The annoyed cashier asked, "Will that be everything, sir?" Sir Prophet of the Obvious became cross-eyed. "Everything? Everything? No! I prophesy. There will surely be more things after these things, which I don't foresee in my near future. Buffalo chicken melt and s'mores blizzard prophecy." The cashier replied, "So what else do you want?" Tim yelled, "Nothing! Yes, I want nothing! Zilch are all I want!" You could hear the Dairy Queen employee roll his eyes over the intercom. "I'm talking about your order, sir." The nearly socially disabled prophet paused for a moment, realizing he misunderstood what the cashier was asking of him. "Oh, goodness me! You initially meant if the set of everything that I foresaw in my prophecy was complete. Yes, the set of everything that I foresee you giving me will include a buffalo chicken melt and a medium s'mores blizzard handed to me upside down." The cashier tried to speed things along. "Yes, sir, that is the standard procedure. Your total will come to..." "Wait, let me guess. $6.66. The non-prophet quickly guessed. The cashier sounded amused. "Impressively close, actually. It'll be $6.67. Please drive around to the window." "Thank you." Zilch's prophet continued, speaking to himself. But I foresee paying only $6.66. Oh, look! A penny! Conveniently displaced here on the pavement. All is as it should be. And I shall pay for the rest with my debit card." The absurdity climaxed with the prophet frolicking around the corner of the building, with his left hand raised high and proud, holding a penny, and his right hand vigorously trying to attain the wallet in his pants hidden beneath the obstructing robe. He paused halfway through his jig to hike up his robe in a more serious attempt to retrieve his primary mode of payment. "Wow, this robe is a pain in the ass. And of course, I already had a penny in here. Wait a minute." As it turned out, he had a bunch of coins stashed away in the rare instance of a cash transaction. 14 pennies, 1 nickel, 3 dimes, and 4 quarters for $1.49. This somehow made him realize that there was an unexpected moral dilemma that came from giving the cashier a singular penny to help pay for his meal. So I could give the young cashier this penny provided by nobody to help keep my prophetic track record spotless. Self-fulfilling prophecies are still correct prophecies, after all. But I know how much a split transaction can significantly increase the suffering of the cashier. I would be making him suffer for a measly penny, just so that I could pay $6.66. What to do? The cashier stuck his head out of the drive-thru window. That'll be $6.67. Where is your car? Tim didn't skip a beat. Excuse me, sir, but I have a minor dilemma, so I should ask you, do you know how to complete a split transaction? The young cashier decided to have a little fun at the expense of this odd man with ram horns on his head without a car in sight. I don't know, you're the one with the prophecy. See if you can correctly guess if I know how to complete a split transaction. Sir Prophet of the Obvious eyes then appeared wide like a deer in the headlights. From his initial perspective, he had a 50-50 shot of keeping his perfect prophecy track record. Nobody knows how to do a split transaction. But are you a nobody? Let's see, I don't see a name tag, and there's a slight smirk on your face. Classic troll behavior. Trolls are perfect stand-ins for nobody. They're usually witty and attempt to be passive-aggressive to any and everybody for their own amusement. So my hypothesis is that there is a 96% probability that you do know how to perform a split transaction, with a 3% additional probability that you will just pass the problem off to someone else who you know knows how to do a proper split transaction. The cashier raised his eyebrow and nodded his head in approval. Impressive deduction skills. Also, I'm not a nobody, and I know how to do a split transaction. The name's Caleb. That'll be $6.67. Tim, the non-enchanter, was relieved. Oh yes, there you go, Caleb. 1 penny provided for nobody in the pavement out here, to make the amount I pay out of my debit card equal to $6.66. Just like I prophesied. Thank you. Caleb exchanged the debit card for an upside-down ice cream treat. And here's your blizzard. The eclectic author yelled, Absolute wizardry! And I know wizardry when I see it. How does the ice cream not fall out of it when it is handed out upside down? Caleb raised a singular eyebrow at the peculiar man, trying to process the prophet's words. It will fall out soon if you keep holding it like that. And here's your buffalo chicken melt and your debit card. Ah, thank you, Caleb. You are a gentleman and a scholar. And another perfectly executed streak of prophecies. Caleb remarked, But I'm still alive. When am I going to die, Sir Prophet of the Obvious? The smartass replied, Later, duh! And I'm running to be just in time to give a speech at the metaphysics seminar in town. The metaphysics seminar was about 1 kilometer away, and the urban setting that surrounded the Dairy Queen was dense enough with traffic to make running a faster mode of transportation than a vehicle. Tim hastily scarfed down his meal while he was waiting at the 3 street intersections that separated him from his destination. The street lights appeared to take forever to signal him to run across each street. As he was arriving at his destination, he exclaimed to himself, Geez, it's like I could have just walked here and made it in the same amount of time. Oh well, go with the flow. It's a good thing I still have a minute to spare. It was a good thing because the man had the need to urinate. And he had already foretold that he was going to be right on time to give the speech. There was no room for him to allow himself to be even a moment early. When the cashier called me, and he thought to himself, when the cashier called me Sir Prophet of the Obvious, I never did tell him that's what this character's full name is. I must be playing the role superbly well for him to have called me that. Whoops, I need to hurry, or I'm going to be late. So the speech began right on time with some laughter from the crowd at their amusement at the costume worn by the metaphysician. The bulk of the speech went well, and the finale went a little something like this. So we metaphysicians spend all this time talking about things and what things are made of. But on what basis can we say that we have completed the field of metaphysics? Every time we get to a fundamental thing, we can break that thing into yet even more fundamental segments. And as mentioned earlier, just because Max Planck had accurately given us the smallest meaningful amount of space and time doesn't mean those segments cannot be further divided. With this in mind, metaphysics can only be completed if we expand to a form of meta-metaphysics, where we create some sort of ontological necessity to our definition of what a thing even is. This should be done in such a way that everything that exists is included within that definition, and that nothing is only paradoxically included in the meta-metaphysical definition. To wrap up, and to remind you of the necessity of nothing's paradoxical inclusion within the set of everything that exists, I will remind you of such a good definition of a thing. A thing is a solitary unit that holds the common dimensional characteristics of whatever we subjectively consider to be consistent with the unit. Once we see the necessity for common dimensions to make sense of everything, we realize that each of these dimensions has the potential to have a value of 0. And this zero-dimensional point is everywhere and within everything that exists. Nothing is everywhere and nowhere, which is the meta-metaphysical paradox that should be learned and be accepted and embraced by all in the effort to finally put a reasonable sense of finality to the field of metaphysics. Thank you. After a small string of claps, a dimensionalism critic was the first to speak up once questions were allowed, and they said to Tim, who they believed was the false prophet, "You have added nothing to the metaphysical issues at hand. Your dimensionalism is a gimmick and a trope." The author of this gospel replied, "Yes, I am well aware that I have added nothing to the discussion. Nihilism is back on the menu, boys. Next questioner." Questions and many other intellectual jabs were given at that time. Most of them were thoroughly answered and dealt with, but little did Tim know that his successor, the one worthy to guide the world with a fist of peaceful anarchy, was about to come out of nowhere to begin his political endeavors, prophesied from long ago and again now. Chapter 16. The Non-Prophet's Sermon on Faith and Life. So, as it happened, I went on a liquid-only fast for 42 straight days and nights. I climbed the tallest mountain in Fayetteville, Arkansas, every day. Upon the heights of Kessler Mountain, on the 42nd day, I began to meditate to bring myself into a balanced state of mind. I reached absolute equilibrium in this meditative state, and I then asked Zilch, "Why should I have faith in you? And what is the meaning of life?" I heard the voice of Nada saying, "Nada, nada, nada. Nada says, go figure it out your damn self." Suddenly, something resembling wisdom arose within me, and I decided to order a pizza. Then go home, get on my computer, and begin asking questions so I could figure it out my damn self. Of course, I didn't actually get an answer on Kessler Mountain, and alcohol and soda count as liquids, so I'm pretty sure I gained weight on this hypothetical all-liquid diet. Pretty much anything can be turned into a liquid with a strong enough blender and some extra water on hand. So why exactly should we believe in nothing? Well, concerning the knowledge people claim to know, an entity cannot choose what they believe. Let's take the unicorn, for example. Really try to choose to believe that unicorns exist in reality. Make a decision to become a unicornist. There are pictures of unicorns everywhere. Surely they cannot be coming from nowhere. So you should accept this knowledge into your belief repertoire of your own free will and accord. But you can't. There isn't even a word that fully encompasses this nearly universal lack of belief in unicorns, despite the evidence for their existence. Perhaps we are all a-unicornists for categorizing unicorns under imaginary subjects. Let's also take the germ, as it is a great example from history. Just 400 years before our early internet age, if I had asked them to choose to believe that there are harmful microscopic organisms that are living all over their bodies, nobody would have believed me. If I would ask them to repent from their ageist beliefs, surely their rational thinking minds would kick in and ask me to prove it. We absolutely cannot choose what we believe. We take in evidence as it comes and reach a subject to change conclusion moment by moment based on the validity and convincingness of the arguments and claims that are brought forth. So to ask others to choose a belief is wrong. Rather, we should ask others to convince me of a belief. Let's take the real null hypothesis approach to the belief of an egos. Choose to believe that he doesn't exist. Like, change your mind right now. Make a stance for atheism today. No, that is not how it works. The burden of proof, the burden to convince, does not lie with those who lack belief, but with those who have believed. So the atheist asks the theist, prove it. I, for one, sought God with all of my heart. I sought out truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and truth is what I value above all else. I don't desire the comfort of 100% confidence if that confidence is in something false, and neither should you desire such a false sense of security. Nevertheless, we can truly say that the belief in nothing is certain. So believe. Believe in the certain truth relayed in this word of Zilch and Nada. Come to them with an open mind and an open heart, and lower your confidence in anything from 100% to a more reasonable 99%. For if you are not 100% sure of everything and anything you believe in, you can truly say that you are 100% sure of nothing. The truth has been revealed. You can be 100% certain in Zilch and Nada. But is faith ever a good means of determining whether something is true or not? If we use the definition of faith provided by Hebrews 11:1 of the Bible, which states, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen," then faith can be used to justify the belief in non-existent things. Let me give a couple of examples to elaborate on the parameters of what exactly this commonly used Hebrews 11:1 definition can encompass. I hope that there is life after death, so that I don't have to stop existing. And I hope to remain conscious for an eternity. Therefore, by the standards of the Hebrews 11:1 definition, I would exercise faith when I declare that my consciousness is eternal. It will continue to exist forever after my bodily demise. Even though we have no way of verifying the validity of this hope, as long as the fundamental nature of consciousness requires for us to process reality may be separable from the physical process of the brain, there is still a chance that consciousness will occur apart from our bodies for a long while after death. My consciousness will last a long time after death is a non-falsifiable claim, but the additional belief in this premise doesn't really add or take away from other objective truths of reality by itself. So faith should cover whatever amount of uncertainty we attribute to this claim so that we can say, my consciousness is eternal with an air of objective certainty. In contrast, I also hope that there is a gangsta leprechaun at the end of an accessible rainbow with a bowl of chocolate Lucky Charms just waiting for me to show up and say to me, "Yo, fool, stuff some of these magically delicious charms into your pie hole. You don't need them cracker white charms. No, you need some of these chocolate black charms, and you'll never go back." Therefore, by the standards of the Hebrews 11:1 definition, I would exercise faith when I declare that there's a gangsta leprechaun at the end of a rainbow waiting for me with a bowl of chocolate Lucky Charms. Even this outrageously absurd claim with layers upon layers of untruth can be believed with faith. Leprechauns do not exist as commonly defined as a mischievous Irish sprite. To give this mischievous Irish sprite the added descriptor of being a gangster makes the claim even more ludicrous. And to make this unlikely character intersect with objective reality by specifically manifesting at the end of a rainbow, which is wholly inaccessible, allows us to easily dismiss the soundness of this truth. It is impossible because rainbows are just a refraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. It will move when you move closer to them. To have this character also be capable of handing off objectively useful sustenance at this inaccessible point in space makes this claim as close to objectively false as a claim can get. But faith still can cover this absurdly high level of uncertainty to the claim, and with faith, we can say, there is a gangster leprechaun at the end of a rainbow waiting for me with a bowl of Lucky Charms, with the same air of objective certainty. The faith in both of these scenarios was the same. Having hope in something that you cannot see equals faith. But what exactly makes the hope that there is oxygen in the air seem so obvious that it as to not really require faith, yet requires faith to believe in 100%? And what makes the chocolate Lucky Charm scenario seem so impossibly unlikely, yet can be believed with the power of faith? The answer, I propose, is faith's relation to the amount of knowledge we either have or think we have about the system we are exercising belief in. Let me explain. Let's take a common example from scientific papers. For a scientific paper to be accepted, most of the time, it has to be found a significant test result. They commonly require a confidence interval of 95%. So let's say that there is a scientist who publishes a paper with exactly a 95% confidence interval, barely making the cut to be published. Then, let's say that the scientist relaxes from his or her scientific jargon and shares their findings with their less educated friends and family. When the scientist states, I discovered this new thing, and claim that this science paper is enough to believe in this thing, I say that at that precise moment, the scientist exercises a 5% faith differential, hoping that the 5% discrepancy from the perfect knowledge of a 100% confidence interval is acceptable enough to relay the information nonchalantly as if it was an objective fact. Of course, any scientist worth their salt would let you know of the 95% confidence interval if you asked them. I'm just saying that any claims to a scientifically objective fact, such as evolution is real, mass electric spacetime is real, or there is oxygen in this room right now, all require a non-zero amount of faith to make those statements. So I propose a better definition of faith as the quantity of uncertainty in a domain of knowledge that is acceptable for the individual to continue believing in that domain of knowledge. By contrast, doubt can be defined as the quantity of uncertainty in the domain of knowledge that is unacceptable for the individual to continue believing in that domain of knowledge. Going back to the science papers, a 5% amount of faith is acceptable to accept the results of the test being performed, but a 5.1% amount of faith is too much for many journals, and it can be said that doubt ruined the whole block of knowledge and makes professional journals deem that research insignificant. An analogy I found relevant to this phenomenon comes from Galatians 5:9 in the Bible, where it compares a little bit of doubt that comes from false teachings to a little bit of yeast that can work its way through a whole batch of dough. So if doubt is there about something you believe in, and that doubt only grows by leading you to ask more questions that don't have good answers, eventually doubt will overpower faith and will ruin a belief that you once held in faith. So faith and doubt are thus two sides of the same coin. You can operate with a little bit of faith in your life, and I would say that you kind of have to in order to build a logical and cohesive narrative around yourself. But at some point, there is a level of uncertainty that will ruin batches of knowledge dough, and will justifiably cause you to lose your ability to believe that you will be able to make good knowledge bread from that dough. You know what nobody says? Flat knowledge dough is a no-go, Joe. The purpose of fields of science, and I would suppose philosophy as well, is to ultimately reduce the amount of faith necessary to believe the knowledge that comes into our ears and eyes and ear holes. From everything from particle physics to astrophysics, we say you can be at least 95% sure that what is said on this paper is true if you follow these axioms. For math, we say, if you follow these particular axioms along with the already accepted axioms of math, you get these interesting quantitative results that might be applicable in other fields of study. For philosophy, we say, you can use Occam's razor to remove any axioms that are unnecessary to reach this particular conclusion. And for religion, we say, you can be 100% confident that what is scribed in this holy book is factually and objectively true. All it takes is the power of faith. Do not doubt, because doubt ruins the salvation that is this holy nully bread of life. Amen. So I say that if faith is the substance of things hoped for, then knowledge is the evidence and the experience that gives the faith credulity to those who accept the knowledge as a whole. Faith is the belief that the knowledge that you do not hold on a belief will be consistent with what knowledge you do hold. Hebrews 11:6 of the Bible states, "And without faith it is impossible to please him, for whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists, and that he rewards those who seek him." If what has been said in this sermon so far has been deemed insightful and truthful, the following question should arise within those who are thoughtful. Why would the Christian God care about how we deal with the knowledge we don't have about him? If Yahweh God wants you to know him, and is an entity to be known, we should be able to draw near to him regardless if we believe he exists or not. We can say the same thing was said by Gangsta Lucky the Leprechaun. Without faith, you cannot please Lucky, for whoever would draw near to Gangsta Lucky the Leprechaun must believe that he exists, and he rewards those who seek him with chocolate lucky charms. So faith is indeed the substance of things hoped for, which makes it all but useless when your hope is in things that do not exist, like Gangsta Leprechauns. If the experience is faulty and the evidence is faulty, it would be safe that faith is based on nothing. Zilch and Nada do not like it when something is named superior to them. The monotheists of the world say nothing is superior to God, as in, God is greater than everything. But I say nothing is superior to God, as in, nothing is greater than God. All faiths alike are based on nothing, but only one philosophical framework is capable of acknowledging this in its entirety: nihilism. Dimensionalism is just one step above nihilism, in that we acknowledge that we can build up objective evidence starting from the dimensions of mass electric spacetime, and we also acknowledge that there are a handful of nearly certain objective truths, like the physical entity that you call I is going to die. But ultimately, beneath everything, there is nothing, and that is the faith of dimensionalism and nihilism. And what do I say is the meaning of life, as the head dimensionalist? How does the faith of dimensionalism go about answering one of the greatest and most difficult existential questions ever conceived? First of all, I organized the hierarchy of sciences as thoroughly as I could, and I proceeded to ask this existential question from the perspective of each tier of the hierarchy, and tried my best to stick within the framework of the respective field of science. From the perspective of various religions and cults, the meaning of life is whatever the leader of the group says is the meaning of life. Jesus is the life. God is the meaning of life. Being good is the meaning of life. And this is how you do it. Being enlightened is the meaning of life. I am the meaning of life. Follow me to give your life meaning. From the perspective of the arts, the meaning of life is the experience thereof. You just gotta experience it yourself. Live and let live. It is also to be productive. People can also find meaning in their life from work, from their art, or from any creative or productive means. Don't lose your ability to produce and do something with your life. Don't just grow in mind, grow in action. Fourthly, to seek out beauty. Although beauty is subjective and lies in the eye of the beholder, I feel this is a necessary addition to adequately balance against the harsher aspects of reality. Sexy people, nice houses, nice cars, vanity, materialism, get them while they're hot. Life is beautiful. Fifth, to react to scary stimuli. Life is also scary. When it's do or die time, you gotta decide when it is time to fight, flight, freeze, faint, fuck, figure, flail, fail, or use forbearance against while dealing with that which fearfully grabs your attention. It is completely up to you. Then, from a philosophical viewpoint, the meaning of life is 6. To increase in self-awareness. When living things are more aware of their own placement in the objective world, they are more likely to adequately respond to scary stimuli when it arises. The meaning of life is to not be a dumbass, because the dumbasses of the population are more likely to do stupid shit that is the direct cause of their self-nullification, which would make them unable to pass their genes onto the next generation. So the more self-aware you are, the less likely you will do something that will make your life non-life. 7. To learn and be curious while seeking truth. This is my personal favorite. I love to allow myself to be debunked by superior knowledge and logic when it appears, which helped me build this grand unified theory of nothing called dimensionalism into what it is today. So get schooled, get educated, read this book. Of course, read other books as well. Listen to the experts in their own fields. Being in tune with the reality of your existence is an important meaning of life. From a mathematical viewpoint, the meaning of life in a single statement is 0 to the 0th power. 0 to the 0th power is in a superposition of states which are both true, 0 and 1. 0. If you want to be a Debbie Downer and say that life is ultimately meaningless, you are correct. The meaning of life is 0. Zilch and nada are the clear and obvious truth for Debbie Downers. 1. If you would be inclined to give your ultimately meaningless life meaning anyways, you would also be correct in doing so, for the meaning of life is also 1, as in life exists as opposed to not existing. Your conscious existence will be a 0 for 99.999999999% of the universe's life. And it is such a small span for our existence to be in the 1 position. In other words, there will be plenty of time for you to not be alive, to not exist, and to not live. So don't spend too much time being gloomy that the 1 life you have is ultimately meaningless. Everything will eventually return to nothing, but that doesn't mean that we should seek to have nothingness be the only meaning of our lives while we are still properly alive. From a physics viewpoint, the meaning of life is entropy and dissipation. Ultimately, life is made up of creatures of entropy, who have evolved to use the excess solar energy that is trapped and maintained within a robust and habitable atmosphere. We turn order into disorder, like children, and make the bits of somethingness scatter into oblivion. Please do this responsibly and in consideration of the other life forms around you. Even when you put in the work to bring things back into order, the total entropy of the universe increases. From a chemistry viewpoint, the meaning of life is 11. Equilibrium. A more common word for equilibrium is balance. Don't have too much negativity or too much positivity. Too much pain or too much pleasure. Learn moderation and live a life of balance, and it will give your life more meaning. 12. Homeostasis. Technically, homeostasis and equilibrium are synonyms. I know that. But another new phenomenon of life emerges from a life that is in equilibrium, and that is that life becomes peaceful and filled with serenity. So be cool. Chill out. Peace be with you. Don't be too anxious. Don't be too depressed. Just deal with the shit life throws at you when it comes. Don't worry about it beforehand. Just plan ahead, and you can have peace knowing that you have prepared for the shit when it hits the fan. Truly, life seeks to be in a state of homeostasis. From a biological viewpoint, the meaning of life is the successful reproduction of cells and or traits. 13. to be successful. Leave your mark. This is what biology cries out for. Take yourself as far into the future as you can. This is the biological meaning of life. 14. To reproduce. If you have been dealt a fairly rough life, just try to survive, but seek to thrive at every opportunity. Honestly, you shouldn't just want to reproduce offspring, ideas, or a legacy. You want those reproductions to be successful too. Making babies that'll make more babies, and making ideas that infiltrate the public consciousness for millennia to come. From a psychological viewpoint, the meaning of life, in a single phrase, is the subjectivity of and adaptation to pain and pleasure. 15. Is subjective. Everything is subjective, and this very much includes the meaning of life. You give your own life meaning. Define it yourself, and don't let others define it for you. You can go your own way. You could take inspiration from others, as I hope you do here, but I sure as heck am not going to hold your hand with one hand, with a golden tablet in the other, saying, "This is the one true meaning of life." 16. Is adaptable. Life finds a way. Life is resilient and does its best to adapt to the environment it is in. 17. To experience pain. Existence is pain. How do you feel with the pain? How do you deal with the pain? Is the pain so incurable that you split your consciousness into multiple personalities in an attempt to find pleasure despite the constant pain? Maybe you become a masochist. Maybe you want to kill yourself with the self-pitying intent of escaping the pain. Don't be weak like that. Killing yourself is the coward's way, and dimensionalists fear no thing. Maybe take a moderate amount of drugs to deal with the pain. As the Buddha's First Noble Truth says, life has inevitable suffering. 18. To experience pleasure. Existence may be filled with pain, but life's pleasures are existence's antidote. Don't overdo the pleasures, though, or you may find yourself loathing otherwise pleasurable circumstances. When one eats too much candy or ice cream, one feels nauseous. When one takes too much of a pleasure or otherwise pain-reducing drug, they may develop drug tolerance, making the drug's effect useless. So seek pleasure in moderation to give your life more meaning. From a sociological perspective, the meaning of life is 19. To love. This was the first answer that I ever deduced, back when I was a teenager, so it still holds a special place for me on this list. Since then, I have learned that love is subjective, so whatever somebody thinks is a loving action to themselves may be different from what somebody else thinks is a loving action. Listen to others with empathy and compassion, and you will find love and acceptance. Communicate with your neighbor and learn what they like. Learn what pleases them. Love is patient, love is kind. Devote yourself to love, and your life will have a much more profound meaning. Hate can go fuck itself. 20. To find acceptance. Hang out with your bros. Find friends who will accept you for who you are. Some entities are capable of being complete dickheads. You don't have to be one yourself by surrounding yourself with such nincompoops. Don't let such people suck the life force out of you. Let them go their own debased way without you. If you seek out love and acceptance from others, you will find it eventually. Almost everyone deserves acceptance in their life. 21. 42. And other similar cultural references. Memes are the lifeblood of a healthy culture, and 42 being the meaning of life is no exception. 42 is a reference to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The meaning of life is also a video made by the Monty Python comedy crew, and is also a pretty sweet song made by the rock band The Offspring. From an astronomical scope, the meaning of life is expansion, a tendency for growth. The amount of space the universe tends to occupy over time appears to increase. As individuals, we should likewise seek to grow as time goes on. When you are or were a child, you want to set yourself up to grow into a fully formed and functionable adult. Life tends to grow. 23. Will inevitably die. At some point, even the fully formed and the functional adult individual will die. They may have grown as a conscious entity until that final day, but like the mathematical zero, eventually the growth the individual experiences will have been for nothing. Death is a universal application of our physical life, which thereby makes death a key defining factor of life. Life is something that will one day cease to be. From a literal viewpoint, the literal definition of life found in my current online dictionary is the condition that distinguishes animals and plants from inorganic matter, including the capacity for growth, reproduction, functional activity, and continual change preceding death. Of course, I have to include this smartass response. Lastly, from a meta-observational viewpoint, an emergent meaning of life is 25. To create order. Rules, regulations, organization, and making sense of all the nonsense. The creation of proper methods of conduct makes sports playable, transportation safe, games more fun, and potentially life more meaningful. Order helps life stay coordinated and makes the acquisition of needs more efficient and effective for the collective. Now, looking at this list, I am fairly confident that whatever answer you give me, if it is not already on this list, can be derived from some combination of these 25 definitions. For example, if you were to say, family gives my life meaning, you would combine to reproduce, to give and seek love, to seek acceptance, and to grow. Or if you were to say, drugs are the meaning of life, you would combine to dissipate, to experience pain, to experience pleasure, to react to what is scary, and it will experience death. Or if you were to say, Shrek is love, Shrek is life, you would combine, it is one, to seek and give love, it is experience life itself, and to seek beauty. I'm sure a future dimensionalist think tank will come to subjectively perfect this list if it is not already perfect. To conclude this sermon on faith and life, we can again ask the question, is there life after death? And what hope is there for the nihilist and the dimensionalist? Here is what I say. Reincarnation and reasonable belief in the eternal recurrence are justified following this line of reasoning. The nothing that we can assume to have existed at the beginning of the universe is the same nothing that will be at the end of the universe. The nothing that builds up our physical reality from irreducible dimensions is the same nothing that is beyond the observable set of everything that exists. Wherever there is nothing, a Big Bang-like event should occur. With regards to time, it doesn't matter if you go before the Big Bang or after the heat death of the universe. It doesn't matter if you spatially zoom in so far as to make the smallest particle appear as the perimeter of a universe, or if you spatially zoom out so far as to make the entire universe appear as a fundamental particle. Whether there is no distinguishable thing in space or time, wherever there is no distinguishable thing in space or time, there will be a distinguished set of everything mass electric spacetime can produce at some point in their split nothingness calculation of 0 divided by 0. Perpetual motion machines may be impossible when using anything, but if the statement no configuration of things will be capable of perpetual motion or energy is true, then it is perhaps true that nothing will be capable of perpetual motion or energy. So here's how reincarnation may work. Nothing happens after we die. Every conscious entity enters what the Buddhists call nirvana and what I call the great nothingness that comes after. That nothing will continue to happen until every last physical thing has died, or as the Christians and Muslims would say, until the last day has come. Once that Omega Day arrives, and the universe as a whole meets the nothingness in heat death, then a new set of everything will begin to exist. Everything will resurrect and come back to life, in a new first or alpha day, a new Big Bang. Everything that is will be again. That includes us, my conscious brethren. So although eons will have passed, and the new universe is met by our new eyes unexplored, it will be as if no time has passed at all. We won't remember this era of everything, just like we don't remember the previous era of everything now. Maybe some glitches happen when we do remember bits and pieces of the previous era, but I personally doubt it. Nothing is perfect, except for that which is we erroneously prescribe perfection. Ramen. Now bear with me the courtesy to read some poetry I wrote. From Zilch I began, and to nada I will go, for all to be null again is inevitable, I know. I will go my own way, and see everything be done, to find my own meaning, and accept that there is none. But actions have consequences, so I will respect all things and all beings so peace can project. To try to show love, understanding, and care, as passively willed by the nothingness pair. Nothing is greater than God, are true words from an anti-hero, so I give Zilchanata my all, which wholly amounts to zero. Everything recycles perfectly for an eternity, so we will again be inevitable. See you in the next iteration of this fraternity. And that's the end of this one.